Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead Her podcast. Today we have the gorgeous Victoria Gill with us, who is a female health and hormone coach at Rebirth. Victoria, welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, and I think we were just chatting away for a good half an hour before we recorded this. I should have just pressed play straight away, but it's been almost a year or so, just over, since you started Rebirth. So how are you feeling?
So content. It's weird because when I think in a year's time how much I've actually done, but when you're in it, you feel like you want your progress or you want the mission or the journey to be a lot quicker, or you think, oh my God, I want to do this and I want to get this done. And I have days where I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. And it was literally yesterday, it was last night, I actually sat and thought, hang on a second, you're only a year in. And I thought, I'm going to list everything I've done in the last year. And when I sat and looked at the list, I thought, oh my God, how have you had time to do anything at all? Like, how have I had time to do anything else? So, yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. And I think because I'm now very much on my mission and I'm obsessed with my business, I love it so much. Like that drive forward and just the want to get it out there and get so many women connected to it. It's just been, yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. And I can't wait for what's to come. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's amazing how quick time passes though. And I get so many times like that as well when I'm sat at the computer or I'm doing something and I just feel like it's not going quick enough and it's
Mm.
not happening fast enough and I feel very unproductive. But when you reverse it back, you've actually done so much more than you realize. And it's actually part of the process is to have those days where you don't feel like you're doing anything, but you are.
Yeah.
It's just all these little steps. And even some days when you've done nothing, they're still adding up to that end result.
Yeah, so this is something I because this is exactly what I was doing. Like I kept being so hard on myself, being like, you're not doing this fast enough, or like doing what we all do, or looking at other people and thinking, how are they doing this quickly, or getting really frustrated and going to bed feeling like I've not achieved anything on that day, or I've not been productive, or I've wasted my time, or whatever else. So what I started doing was on a night time is writing a list of, right, what have I achieved that day? And when I started doing that every night and looking at, oh my God, actually, you've done this today, and then realizing I'm doing so much more than what I think. And even if I'm just putting one brick at a time into building my little castle, my little empire, it's then progressively over that period of time where you think, oh yeah, I have done a lot. And it's just when you're in it day to day, you kind of can't see that, can you? It's the same as like your weight loss journey, or when you're prepping for a competition, or all these different things. You don't see it in the day to day. It's not until obviously you look at a 12-week prep or a 16-week prep where you think, oh my God, look at the difference that I made. So yeah, I think just trying to remind yourself that even on the days where you don't think you're doing anything, you're probably doing more than what you think you are.
Yeah, I like that little daily review. I think that's a good thing. And sometimes for me, it might even just be simple stuff like you've done washing and you've done cleaning and you've done the dog walk and you've showered today. Sometimes things like that are things that you don't give yourself credit for, but they're things that can make you feel good and also can kind of get you to where you want to be. And
Yeah.
just taking a wee 5 minutes before going to bed to be like, look at all the stuff that I've done today. You've not just sat in your ass and done nothing at all. There's been
Yeah,
something productive that you've done.
yeah,
And
even 1% every day.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I have like, if I didn't have so that's my evening routine, my little wind down routine, that's part of that. And then I have a morning routine, which is part of like what I teach in my rebirth program. So I have it's called my Goddess Power Hour. So I have an hour and I get it all done in an hour, and I connect to elements of the earth, water, fire, and air, and I get it all in an hour. And if I didn't do that every day, I would feel lost. But once I've got that hour out the way, I already feel like I've set myself up to be in the best position possible. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And what do you mean by earth, air, fire, water? What does that involve?
So my goddess power hour. So first thing, earth. So I let myself feel grounded. So connecting my feet to the floor. If obviously we're blessed with beautiful weather, which is very rare, obviously in the UK, I'll go and stand outside like barefoot on the grass, or just on the pavement. And so I earth myself first, then I'll do my journaling and my meditation. So they're part of my earth elements. So that's how I start my grounding. Then I bring my air in. So I'll do some breath work. I'll do some affirmations that are around the heart chakra. So the element of your heart chakra is the air. So I'll do my breath work, do my affirmations, and then the first thing I do is open the window, and I'll take like really big deep breaths of some fresh air. So that's the air element. And then the fire element, I'll look at the sun for a couple of minutes. So just connect to the sunlight. I'll literally light myself a little candle and say myself like a little affirmation. Then I have a ginger tea, so to get my digestive system going. And then the water element is make sure I've had a big glass of water, have a shower. If I'm feeling in the mood for it, I'll do a cold plunge. It's not always there. So they're like that's my little morning routine. So it just helps me set myself up for the day. And yeah, it takes me an hour, if that. And then I feel like I've done so much in that hour. And I always start the day feeling like, oh, goddess mode.
I think an hour for some people would feel like, holy shit, I don't have time for that in the morning. But like, it doesn't need to be an hour either, could it? Like, you could literally have your ginger on the go. You could like be getting up, having your glass of water, and then you put your ginger, and then maybe even just some quiet time in the car. Like, you could maybe do it a wee bit differently than it being as structured for people.
100%. It's adaptable completely. Like, and I can either take, like, I have some mornings where I physically don't have an hour. So I can just take little elements out of each one and have a smaller routine, or put things together. So like I'll have my ginger tea whilst I'm doing my journaling. So I can tie things together. But I'm not a morning person at all. It takes me until at least midday before I feel like I can function or operate or be productive. So I need the hour. Like I'm blessed that I can have that hour, but I think I need it to slowly uncurl. But easily can put that down into, you could do that in 20 minutes, half an hour, just little elements of it. So yeah.
And I think it's something as well you've built over time, isn't it? Like, you've not just woke up, listened to this podcast and been like, right, I'm going to do that tomorrow morning. It would overwhelm you to hell, but it's been something that you've maybe added in that if life did get busier, you'd still be able to make that time for it because it's already a part of your routine, and you know the benefit from it as well, don't you? Like, you know, after you do some of those things, you're going to feel amazing and it sets you up for the day, and you love that feeling. So like when you're not doing it, you feel a bit crap. So like you'd always make the time for it now because it's a part of your life. But right, we'll go back to Rebirth. I would love if you could just give us a bit more information about how you help the women that you do. Like, what is it you guys kind of focus on and work on in Rebirth?
So we focus on all elements of female health. So we're obviously looking at your physiology, the physical parts of your health. So anything that's related to like your menstrual cycle, your hormonal balance, hormonal profile, the physical health of your body as a woman. And to start encouraging women to stop treating their bodies like they're small men. So what I mean by that is we often follow advice, like especially fitness industry, that sort of thing. We're always looking at information and it's usually best accommodated to male physiology. So actually looking physically at women's health, but then bringing in all the other elements of looking at your emotional health and how that all ties together, looking at your spiritual health and how that all ties together. And rather than treating women's health like it's just one isolated thing, bringing everything, it's holistic. To me, it's holistic health and healing in its truest form because it's everything together, and treating women uniquely as individual expressions of the feminine as well. So again, like there's so many people that will just give out the same nutrition plan, the same guidance, the same information to every single woman, but it's not taking into consideration the stories or the emotions that you're holding in your body, or like what your inheritance is, what the genetic factors are, all that sort of stuff, and just bringing it all together. So it is considering every single aspect of female health, and just bringing women back to themselves, like bringing women back to their intuition. Like we are so discouraged as women through so many different things to not pay attention to that intuition, that inner voice that we've all got. We've been encouraged for centuries to not pay attention to that. So it's bringing women back to themselves, bringing them back into their inner wisdom. So a little bit of everything.
I think that's amazing. And I think as well, before you did your history was still female fat loss, maybe back in the day.
Yeah.
And we were kind of chatting about earlier, like this, I was very similar as well when I first started coaching, and I kind of lost a passion for just helping people lose weight because that's not the problem. Like it's everything else that surrounds their life and how they feel. These are all the important things that are going to help them get to where they want to be. And it's kind of similar to what we do on Lead Hard, is like looking at other things that are going on, not just here's a nutrition plan, here's a training plan, go and do it. It's like, let's look at all this other stuff that is affecting your confidence, your moods, your energy, your mindset. Because if we get all those things right, everything else will follow.
Yeah, 100%. And like my academic background was psychology. So my degree was actually in psychology. So when it was almost like I was studying myself, I suppose. So when I did my degree, and I just loved anything that was sort of like mental health related, the power of your mind, like all that side of stuff. Then obviously went on my own trajectory and got into competing. And from my own experience of that and knowing why I got into competing, it wasn't from empowerment, it wasn't from confidence, it was from the complete opposite. It was from insecurity, it was from feeling out of control, it was from not loving myself and accepting myself. So through going through my own journey, then obviously getting into like female fat loss and just helping women with things that I personally felt were very surface level. I felt like we weren't covering any of this deeper meaning. There was nothing else that was sort of contributing to women's well-being, their connection to themselves, their sexuality, their feminine energy. Like it just had no connection for me at all in the end. So that was kind of how I ended up then being like, no, something drastically needs to change here. And the work that I do now, all these things that we all strive for, confidence, feeling good about yourself, like positive body image, like loving yourself unconditionally, has no relation to what's happening on the outside whatsoever. It's not even something that I cover in my program anymore, like the aesthetic side of stuff, in terms of like, right, like how are we going to lose 10 pounds, or how are we going to make sure that you get on stage or you compete, or all these things, doing a photo shoot. It's just not there anymore. But I'm getting the outcome with all these women that they wanted in originally by not even touching that side of stuff. So it's really, really powerful. I love it so much.
So much more rewarding when you can kind of see the changes in that way rather than like what you used to do. But I think it's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes people don't know that's what they need. They just see the transformation photos and stuff online, and we've maybe kind of started there. So like it's normal, and that's maybe a stepping stone for some people. But that's the hard thing from where me and you are at, is helping with the more deep and meaningful stuff. And some people don't know they need that until they start, and then they're like, it's the best thing that they've ever done. So
Yeah.
what I kind of think as well, like from a coaching perspective, like when I go on your Instagram and stuff, like I can just tell you are loving what you're doing. But I think a lot of it as well happens because you've been through that transition yourself and now you're teaching people it. Do you feel like that's where kind of rebirth came from? Is have you gone through a bit of a journey yourself to then become this version of Victoria?
Yes, and that's exactly why I called it Rebirth, because it was my rebirth. It was me like sort of going through that journey myself. And like I say, just bringing elements in that were so much deeper. Like I have never felt more liberated, more free, more empowered in myself, more connected to myself. Like I've never felt like I do now. And just going through my own journey of all parts of it. So not just sort of like the aesthetic side of stuff, but also I've had so many experiences in relation to my own female health, hormonal health, gynae health, obviously like miscarriage, all that side of stuff. I've been through all of that myself, and the experiences that I've experienced firsthand of like not getting any support, not having any information or education given to me, constantly feeling like there was nobody to go to, the emotional side of all of that, and how that impacts you and your self-confidence and all that sort of thing. And just going through all of that myself, and even down to things like the way that women are treated in Western medicine, how much inequality we actually have as women in health. And just going down those different pathways, that was what sort of led to my own rebirth. And then I started it from there and just thought that this is something that all women need. We all need this. And healing things from years and years ago. Like I've just been writing up a module on ancestry and how we connect to ourselves back through like the trauma that we experience when we're younger, or what our experiences of our first periods were like. Like these are things that nobody talks about. And I was sat in a circle of women, and we did like a women's circle talking about like our first menstrual cycles. And I was the only one in the whole group who had a positive experience. Everybody else's experiences were surrounded with like shame or embarrassment or confusion or all these different things. And I sat there thinking, oh my God, this is like a huge thing that nobody's talking about. But our first experiences of things like that have so much influence on how we feel about our bodies as adult women. And sometimes it's not until we get into like we are 30s, maybe even later, where these conversations are actually even coming up. And I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and she was talking about perimenopause, and she was like, isn't it crazy that now I'm actually coming towards the end of that part of my life, and now it's only just now that I'm actually addressing those first experiences, and I've sort of missed that entire part of being a woman and having the opportunity to have that positive experience with my menstrual cycles. It's not until now that I'm starting to lose them that I'm actually addressing what had happened originally. So yeah, it's very deep. We could talk about this all day.
I know, and I can tell, and I feel like I've got so much stuff that I would just love to ask you as well, like, because there's so much that has happened that hasn't been addressed for so many women. And the sad thing is, it's like it's half of the world, half of the population is pretty much women, and nobody wants to talk about it for all years. I do think it's changing a wee bit now, but I don't know if that's because me and you are older and we're self-aware and we're around people that are talking about it. I don't know what it's like for a 14, 13-year-old girl right now, but I do think it's maybe changing from podcasts like this and from getting to listen to people like yourself, like to actually normalize a conversation around having a period. But yeah, you're so right. Like, even when I think of myself, it was always hush hush. And it's like, don't tell anyone that you've got a period. And it was almost like bad and scary and heavy for such a young age, but it's so natural and healthy. It's not a bad thing. It's a healthy thing to have a period as well, isn't it?
And actually starting to treat it as a sacred process, because that's exactly what it is. So this is a lot of the work that I do, is actually changing the narrative and the perception that we have around it. So as young women, we're taught things like, if you are on your period and you need to go to the bathroom, like, this is something so many women will think, oh my God, I'd probably still do that now. You'd put a tampon down your sleeve so that nobody could see it, and then carry it. Do you know what I mean? Like, things like that. It's constantly something that we're taught to hide it, don't talk about it, it's dirty. Like, I've said this on my socials before, even using words like sanitary products, it indicates to us it's something that needs to be cleaned, or it's dirty, or it needs to be sterilized. Or I think we had menstrual hygiene day the other day. This is like a thing on social media, menstrual hygiene. And the amount of women that were like, why are we using this word of it's something that we need to clean ourselves of, when actually it's such a sacred process. It tells you so much about what's happening in your body that month. It tells you about where your hormones are at. It tells you about your emotional health. Like, it is literally a sacred process. But this is something that's happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think we are so lucky now as women, because I think you are absolutely right. There is a shift. There is definitely more conversations being had about it, more open conversations, more opportunities to listen to things on podcasts, attend retreats, attend events. Obviously, that's what I do as well, where these are more open conversations. But one of the modules that I have, which is about ancestry, is looking at the history of women collectively. So looking at witches and looking at how women have been treated throughout the last hundreds of years, maybe even more, and looking at how, like, medicine, religion, all these influences, and how we've got to this position where it's something that we don't talk about when it's such a sacred process. Mm-hmm. It's such a powerful process for us to experience every single month, and instead of feeling like it's something that we dread, or it's inconvenient, or it's embarrassing, or whatever other words we want to use, really powerful words we want to use around it, it's changing that narrative completely. And for some women, it's such an alien thing to do. It's like, oh my God, I've never even considered thinking about my period in that way. So yeah.
And I think I've been like guilty of not looking into things much, and I think I was always brought up by someone of like, you just get on with it and you keep quiet. and you've not to be a pest. Like, you know how when my dad would be like, oh, that woman is up herself, or that woman's so demanding. And it's like, now when I think back, I'm like, I held myself back because I didn't want to be like that because of what he had said. Whereas actually, like, she's not demanding and she's not high maintenance, she just bloody knows what she wants. And that is such a powerful thing to be. And I think I've always just followed what you're told. So I have only, and I think you might be quite similar as well, I've only just came off the pill this year, and I actually did a podcast about this a couple of weeks ago. And at first, when people were talking about natural cycles and not being on contraception and that you don't need it, I was really judgy to start with. I was like, I don't think that's positive information to share. And it has a place, it absolutely does for some people. And it did have a place with me, and it gave me a sense of control, and it made me feel safe. But now I've came off it, I feel like I'm actually starting to learn my body so much more than I ever had before, because I just thought, going to a Catholic school, you touch a boy and you get pregnant. So get on the pill as quick as you can, like, I'm going to get pregnant. But actually, it's not as easy as we maybe think when we're young. But I just fell down that path of just being told what you should do and do it, and never really explored or had the information that I wanted to know what actually options I did have being a woman. I do think there's so much stuff coming out now, like fertility and like the Flow app, and what have I got? I've got natural cycles, and I just really think it's actually helping me learn so much more about my body, and I'm actually now happy I took that decision to come off the pill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so be compassionate with yourself, because I think that is how the vast majority of us as women are, because that's a whole societal thing, isn't it? That's not a you thing, that's everybody. That's just how as women we are communicated to, or words that we're like, I had difficult, oh, she's really difficult. And when I was younger, that reiterated to me I needed to be a yes person, a people pleaser. So of course, all my 20s, early 30s, that's all I did. And I had no idea who I was and what I was doing, because I didn't want to be difficult. Whereas now I'm a little bit older, I think the more difficult I am, the better, because that's me asserting, actually, no, this is what I believe, this is my boundary, and being really assertive in putting those in place, rather than, I'm happy to be difficult now, rather than just people please everybody that I've got around me. But I think as women, that's how we're taught to be, is the ideal. And even looking at like cycles and things, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said to me, yeah, but you can get pregnant at any time. And I was like, no. No, you've only got like a small window, and this might blow your mind a little bit, but when your egg is released, your fertility window as a woman is only like 8 to 12 hours. It's very, very small. It's a male sperm that extends that window and makes it longer, because they survive a lot longer. And most women don't know that. But why would any of us? Because we're not taught any of this information. Like, I don't know about you, but the sex education or the female health education I got at school was non-existent. It was nothing really related to female health and actually how everything works properly. So your fertility window is actually really, really small. But I know you mentioned like the Flow app and natural cycles and all that side of stuff, but I actually teach my clients how they can use the moon to regulate their cycles, and how they actually use the moon to tell them roughly where they are in their cycle, but also tuning into the signs and your signals. Your body will tell you everything you need to know. So if you learn enough, or you spend enough time with your body looking at specific signs from your body, I'm ovulating, you can be completely contraception free, and it's okay.
Yeah. Do you know what I think is funny as well is, like, sometimes I'll speak to Joe about the moon, and I've actually wrote that down as one of our questions today, because like I can totally feel a shift and a heaviness that, and I can't really explain it, but it's different when there's like a full moon, there's like a pull, there's this heavy emotion, there's change coming, I feel a bit on edge, I feel a bit anxious. And I say it to Joe and he's like, shut up, like, what are you talking about? But I feel like stuff like this isn't explored because the science can't like prove it. There's no X and Y, but nature is nature. And I do think some people just dismiss this as like, it's a bit woo-woo. But if you genuinely can become a wee bit more intuitive, you can feel these things happening.
Yeah. And that's a very Western, like in the West, we need research. We need a piece of paper. We need these statistical things to tell us what is right and what's wrong. When actually, if you look at a lot of Eastern medicine, it's more about nature, intuition, and that side of things. And I actually think there's so much more power in that. And this was kind of roundabout what I did my TED talk on, was that we, especially in the West, we value things that are associated with masculine energy so much more. So things like evidence, fact, money, achievement, all these sorts of things are very masculine qualities. When I say masculine, I don't mean men, just to make that clear. But we don't value feminine aspects, and parts of the feminine are being connected to the earth, being connected to Mother Nature, accepting that we are soft pieces of biology. Of course, we are influenced by what we have around us, and especially as women, like the history of women and lunar cycles is huge. Like there's no coincidence that we have 13 lunar cycles in a year, and as a woman on average you have 13 menstrual cycles on average in a year. Like how can you deny these things?
Yeah, was it not a woman that created calendar like in the caves?
Yes,
It
yeah,
was tracking our cycle, and that was like the first calendar was
yeah.
from a woman doing that, which
Following the cycles and following the pattern of the moon. Like it actually blows my mind now to think, why are we questioning these things? Like it's bizarre. But if you know the moon's pulling all that water on the planet, of course it's going to have some sort of pull on you as well. But I think just looking at the seasons and how the seasons influence us and how we feel at different times of the year, it's strange, isn't it? Because if we talk about things like seasonal affective disorder, everybody acknowledges that that is a thing. And what that is influenced by the light, by the sun. So how can it not how can it not make a difference? But yeah, just being a bit more connected. And one of the elements of the feminine is that the feminine doesn't need to know everything, every detail of everything all the time. The feminine is freedom, it's fluidity, it's going with the flow. So I think a lot of the work that I do is actually bringing women back into the feminine, because we, especially in the industries that me and you have been in, we get so connected to masculine energy that we've forgotten what that soft, nurturing, restorative, restful feminine energy actually is. But a lot of that is working with parts of the earth and being grounded and connected to what we have going on around us.
yeah, and a big thing to point out as well is like there's so little research on women because we're so hard to research on. So yeah, being able to kind of look at things in a different way is research in a different
Yeah.
area, you know, like using something else to actually understand our bodies than having to have a piece of paper or a research on a number of people, because you can't really do that with us.
You know what as well, Leanne, like so true. There's so little research done on women in general. There's so much less research done on us because we're so much harder to research. But something I've learned the hard way is that I believe women first before I believe a piece of paper. So let me explain what I mean. So I am ironically very much a scientist at heart. I loved research. I desperately want to do my PhD. Like I love research. I adore it. However, I don't need a piece of paper to tell me what my experience is. And I think, again, this is such a powerful thing to encourage women to do. How many times as women do we go to the doctor and we tell them, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z, and you're dismissed of what your experience is? And it's kind of like, well, it's just normal, or you made to feel like it's kind of like in your head a little bit. And we're constantly discouraged away from listening to that intuition. And something that I say with my clients over and over again is believe your body first. Always believe your body first. Look at a piece of research second. So sort of going off on a tiny little tangent, I know me and you have talked about me having my breast implants removed. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have them removed was because I've got all the symptoms going of something called breast implant illness. And when you look at the research, there is no research. So if you go and speak to any medical professional, they tell you, and I've had this 3 times in the last couple of months, I've basically been spoken to like it's all in your head, it doesn't exist, there's no research to support what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. However, I know what my experience is. I know what my symptoms are. I feel them. I live them every single day. I also know tons of women. When I say tons, I'm in a group of over 100,000 women that all have the same symptoms, all experience the same things, and you've got all these women saying, we're experiencing all these symptoms, but then there's no research to support it, so it can't exist. But why are we denying the experiences of women? Why are we not listening to what women are collectively saying? So I think research is so important, but believe your body first. Just because you don't have a piece of paper to back up a statistical significant thing, it doesn't mean that what you're experiencing doesn't exist. And I think there's so many things that we don't know yet. We haven't done the research on women extensively yet, so we don't know. We've got a long way to go looking at female health. So one of the main things I try and get across to every single woman that I work with is believe your body first before you believe a piece of paper, before you believe what somebody else is telling you about your experience. Like, keep coming back to yourself and don't deny what your reality is. Like, if that's what you're experiencing, that's what you're experiencing. Told you I'd go off on a tangent, man.
Fine. It's good that it's just, you're so right though, and we both feel so, it's like from in here, isn't it? It's like this feeling in our heart that it's not right and it's not fair, and that we do need to kind of really just explore when things are off. And I do think people get this, women especially get this in other avenues as well. Like I had it with Lola. I know she's a dog, but I just had this feeling there was something not right with her. And I was saying to Joe for like over 2 weeks, and she didn't get diagnosed with Radisson's for another 2 weeks after that. And it was like, I knew there was just something not right. And even Joe said it. He's like, you could tell. He's like, you just had that feeling there was something wrong. And people get it with their kids as well.
Mhm.
You say the mum's always right. You know your own kid, and when they're off and there's something not right. And maybe because the illness hasn't shown in the paperwork yet, they know something's coming and something's not right, that you could have caught it a wee bit earlier.
I have women all the time that they're going through sort of like the Western medical process of, they go to the doctor, something's wrong, blah blah blah. They have a set of blood tests, and then they get the tests back, and the doctor's like, well, everything on your blood test is fine. So what then? And then obviously they're sent on the way, and then it's from the work that I will do with them that then we kind of resolve everything. But just because it's not on that piece of paper doesn't mean that something isn't there or your experiences are not real. Like I definitely, and we sometimes hear the words, as a woman, your intuition is a superpower. And I don't agree with that at all. Your intuition is an innate part of who you are. It's not it's just part of who you are. And I think rather than giving it the novelty maybe of being a thing, like actually you come back to your intuition because it is just an innate part of who you are as a woman. And I asked this in one of my yoga classes not that long ago, and said to them, when you look at embodiment, so you're coming away from your thinking mind and you're coming down into your feeling body, think about your intuition or feel your intuition. How many times has your intuition been wrong? Like, just consider that for a second. How often is your intuition wrong? And they were all like, never. Oh, there you go. Never. It's never wrong. Your intuition is never wrong. But we can't measure that. We can't put that in research or study it or whatever. So I think sometimes we need to stop questioning the way that we're looking at things or the way that we're measuring things, and actually go with what our gut feeling is, what our intuition is, because it's very, very rarely, as women, it's very rarely wrong. But we are constantly pulled away from it or told to question it, or think that it's all in your head. It's not real, it doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. So I think, yeah, intuition, superpower if we give it the attention that it needs.
Yeah, cool, amazing. And if we roll back a little bit to female hormones and health, if we had someone maybe listen to this, how would they know something's maybe a bit off? And like, for example, they might need to work with someone like you. What would feel not quite right for them? What would that look like or feel like?
So the obvious things are things like, obviously, if your cycle's irregular, or you feel like you're missing periods. When I say missing periods, what I mean is you've just got an extensively long period. So you feel like you've missed a month, or if you've got excessively heavy periods to the point that you daren't go out, or you're nervous about what clothes you're wearing, if it's affecting your life in some way. Obviously severe period pain is another one. Pain during sex, feeling like you're disconnected from your body, or your sex drive isn't there, or you don't want to have sex. Those sort of really obvious things. But then it might be something really subtle, like really significant shifts in your mood, really significant shifts in your energy, feeling really fatigued all the time, struggling with anxiety, struggling with depression, struggling with fertility, of course, if that's on the agenda as well. So many different things, headaches, really frequent headaches, sensitivity to food, yeah, lots and lots of different things. And I think something that, so it's not obvious, but really subtle things like not feeling like you're connected to your own energy. How can I articulate that a little bit better? Where you just don't feel right in yourself, or you don't feel confident in yourself, or questioning who you are as a person. So many different things.
Yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes when people feel something's off, they will just jump into doing a diet or something like that. But this seems like it's a lot more kind of, yeah, maybe something would be important to do before you jump into any kind of other training program or doing something like that, is just pausing and really listening to the body and being like, actually, maybe there's something more important or bigger going on here that I should explore first, and maybe try and get this feeling right before then you look into like something nutrition and training wise maybe as well.
Yeah, and I think something that a study that I did read was about how, as women, we don't usually intervene and make changes until it's affecting our external appearance in some way. So if we are struggling with weight gain, if we're struggling with losing our hair, or we're struggling with really bad skin, they're usually anything that's sort of aesthetic based. They're usually the things that motivate us to start taking action, when actually we should be looking at the internal factors of how we feel, and instead of going straight to, well, I need to adapt, or I need to change myself, or I need to evolve myself externally in some way, is actually going a little bit more inwardly and looking at the internal factors of what needs addressing here. Because every single symptom, everything that we experience, is your body working with you, not against you, and trying to communicate something needs to change. So I'm going to send you this signal of depression. I'm going to send you this signal of really bad period pain. I'm going to send you this signal of you're struggling with your skin, so that maybe you're going to pay attention to me and make some changes in some way. But we've just got a little bit disconnected from paying attention to those signals. So I think, yeah, coming a little bit more inwardly rather than just thinking something external needs to change, and really looking at your health internally rather than how you're externally presenting yourself to the rest of the world.
No, I don't know if this is true or not. You might know, but is there not something in that, like when you're maybe like really run down and you're burning the candle at both ends, there's some part of you that's like the weakest. So it will be like your gut or your period or your migraines, like this will flare up, and it's like that sign of your body going like, you need to slow down a little bit. And it's always like everybody's got that thing. I don't know if it's something that's weaker within their body or whatever, but there's always that thing that flares up. So for me, it's cold sores. I get
Yeah.
kind of cold sores or UTIs sometimes when I know I've maybe just been pushing and pushing, maybe just a little bit too much. And as soon as I get them, I'm like, whoa, like that's a sign something's not
Yeah,
right.
interesting. Yeah, so of course that's going to be influenced by obviously like your lifestyle and genetics and all that side of stuff. But mine is my eyes. So I know I'm my body's like at that really bad point when something happens to my eyes. Like I have a muscle here that doesn't work properly because I once got that burnt out that the severity of the inflammation in my eye here means that when I'm tired, my eye starts to close on its own. But that's so interesting that we all have these things that manifest in their own unique ways. But I think that's actually really powerful, Leanne, because you're that self-aware that you know what those signs and signals are. You know what your nervous system's telling you. I need to stop now. Something's not quite right. But just learning to listen to your body when it's saying, hey, I'm going to send this signal to you. Hopefully you're going to listen and adapt what you're doing in some way.
Yeah, cool, amazing. And I'd like to reverse back a wee bit because a lot of people forget I competed. What year was it when you did all your competitions, like bodybuilding competitions, for anyone that doesn't know what that is?
Isn't that funny? Sometimes, like, you use the term compete, we all do it. Use the term competing and just assume everybody knows what we're competing in. I was bikini in 2013 and 2014, and then I went up a class and went into wellness. And then the last show I did was 2017 now. So Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday. It feels like it was such a huge part of my life, like such a significant part. But it's actually a really short period of time. It was only from 13 to 17. So it was actually a really small period of time. And obviously that's like what, how many years ago is that now? 7 years ago. So yeah, a long time ago now. Bikini and then into wellness.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize I did it, because I did it the first year just around when I started my coaching. So it was like 2015, that full year. Joe did it for like a year before and for a couple of years after, but 1 year was enough for me, where I was like, I've done what I wanted to do. I'm finished
Yeah.
with it, and I learned so much from it. But sometimes like your pictures though, when you shared on your Instagram recently of you back in maybe 2017 or earlier, I was like, you look like a total different woman to
Yeah.
you know, I know today it's crazy. But some people would look at photos like that with people in bikini. You have pretty much the bikini model body, and you stand in front of judges and they pick the best bikini body, basically. That's it, isn't it? It's quite a subjective thing, but it takes a lot of work to get there. And some people think that's what we should look like, and some people think that is achievable, and some people think that is what confidence is, and it's really not, right?
Absolutely not. So the third competition that I did, I was the national bikini champion, and I can remember they were literally walking over to give me my trophy, and I knew that because I'd won 2 weeks later, I was going to have to do the Europeans. And I can remember standing there feeling like I feel that weak and that depleted and that depressed and that unhappy that I just wanted to almost say, I don't want it. I don't want it. And how ridiculous is that? I'd spent all that time prepping for it, sacrificing for it, impacting my health that would then take me years to undo for that one moment. And when it actually got to that moment, I didn't even want it. I didn't want it because of the impact it was having on every element of my life. Absolutely every element. I've never felt it's so interesting. I've never felt so unconfident as I did when I was competing compared to now, where like you've just said, I look like a completely different person. I am so much more confident and loving to myself now than I ever have been. And to go just off of like aesthetics and that dream body, like I was in all the big magazines when magazines were a thing. Obviously they're not now. I was in them all and I was so unhappy and so insecure, and I'd berate myself of what needed to change or where I needed to be better, and I hated what I saw in the mirror, and actually it's the complete converse to that. It's yeah, we put it on this pedestal, but we're not considering all these other elements. It's like we're all striving for this thing that actually most people that have that thing or get that thing, they're miserable in themselves anyway, but then are talking about confidence. And this is the downside of social media, isn't it? Like we've all got this sort of shop front window that we all project out to the rest of the world. But I think a lot of what people say isn't in alignment with what they really think or what they really feel. But obviously, when you're looking at it from the outside in, I think the communication or the perception of things just gets lost a little bit. Like I know people that they'll post about self-confidence, they'll post about body image, and they're struggling with those things the most. They're struggling with those things more than anybody else. So it's yeah, I think just having a bit of an awareness and realizing, listening to people like me and you speak and saying actually it isn't everything, and it isn't a guarantee. It's
No.
no guarantee.
Yeah, I remember I lost my bum, lost my boobs. Like I just felt like skin and bones and muscle, zero libido. And it's just got, oh wow, you've got abs. Oh wow, you look amazing. And for me, it was like a real learning journey. It was never to be the smallest I could be for any other reason, and like what is required to get there. So then I could be like, whoa, hold on a minute, like this is not what we should be striving for and looking to achieve. But yeah, and just to kind of quickly drop on it as well before I move on, is like I do think the same thing as you. Like there's so many women online and they look incredible, but when you meet them in person, they're the least confident people I think I've ever met. And it's really sad because they're idolizing this image and they're not happy in any
Yeah.
way. So like with us keeping all that in mind, that some people can be the leanest they can ever be and not be confident and not be happy, like, well, that means people can feel happy as they are right now and feel confident as they are right now and feel sexy. And I think a lot of women lose that sexy feeling, don't they? And I think something that you've been really talking about a lot on your Instagram recently, and I love it because no one talks about it. Like, some people think it's not for them and it's just normal to not feel sexy. We're old, we're tired, we're too busy, but it's so important, isn't it, for general happiness and well-being, is to have a libido and have a sex drive and to have an intimate relationship when you've been in together for years. And me and Joe are very passionate about that, and we make so much time for each other because we know it's important and it makes us both happy. But some people lose it. So it's not about looking a certain way to find it. So how can people maybe find it day to day? If you have an answer to that, because I feel like you're the woman, I was like, I need to ask you this on this podcast because you're the woman to go to maybe be able to explain that blurb that I've just gave you.
I think for when you were sort of introducing that topic, then there was two major things that came to mind for me. So first of all, I think a lot of women don't feel like they're worthy of it. I think that's the first thing to work on, and actually working on getting women to realize that you, regardless of your size, regardless of your age, regardless of what you've done, where you're going, etc., you are worthy of that already. Nothing has to change. Like, I think going sort of touching back on the conversation we just had, I think what a lot of women get in their head is, I'll feel sexy when, or I'll start to think about that when I've lost 10 pounds, or when I've lost my mum tum, or whatever the reason or the justification might be. And I think it's getting across to women that you're worthy of that feeling already. Nothing needs to change in order for that to be true, and actually working on that side of stuff. But I also think as women, especially when it comes to like female sexuality, we are always articulated to that you feel it's for somebody else. And when I had my lingerie brand, this was the whole ethos of my brand, was that the lingerie was not about the male observer. It was about you as the female consumer. So it's not about how you are embracing your sexuality for somebody else. If you've got a partner, fabulous, and like I'm exactly the same as you, it's a huge part of our relationship as well. But it's actually about you. It isn't about somebody else. And I think, like, as women, sex is something that we're reiterated that it's something that's done to you, or it's almost like a performance, or you're showing up for somebody else. And challenging that narrative and working on female sexuality in isolation. So what does it mean for you as a woman, just as you, just on your own, and embracing that side of yourself? And it makes all the difference in how you show up in your job, or how you show up at work, or how you show up in other relationships, how you dress and what you wear. Like, that's a conversation in itself, like the psychology of what you wear. But I think trying to get across to women that female sexuality is its own thing in isolation. It's not, doesn't have to be something that you consider in relation to somebody else, if that makes sense. So I think they're two really key things that women could work on, or they're two things that's like a really good starting place for embracing those other sides of yourself, and just romancing yourself. And it sounds really strange, but actually dating yourself, and making yourself feel nice, and doing things for yourself like you would a partner, or like you would in the first stages of a relationship, and actually just romancing yourself and letting yourself feel good for feeling good's sake. So yeah, I've got so many books and resources and places. There's a woman called Mama Gina who wrote a book called Pussy, and it's one of my it's the best. It's the best book ever. I love her. She's absolutely incredible. But just making it a normal part of conversation as well. And like you said, there's so few people that are talking about it. But I think it's because we have so much taboo around the subject, because nobody talks about it. It's almost like this thing of like, if I don't look at it, then it's not there. When actually, the more you talk about it, it's like a normal part of my day, of course. But what you find is when you start to normalize things, you start to feel like, oh yeah, like this is just a normal part of being female, or and I think just getting rid of the taboo around it, and whatever the narrative around it is.
Yeah. What would you say could be one step that you could maybe kind of take to introduce that? Like, something that comes to mind, like you said, dating yourself is important, but even just like maybe buying some nice underwear that you like and it makes you feel good and makes you love, maybe just even the color of it.
Mm-hmm. And this was the exact reason that I started my brand, my lingerie brand, because it was about you wearing some beautiful, whether you liked the color of it, whether you liked the fabric of it, whatever it was, like nobody else in the whole entire world has to see it other than you. But just having a really nice set that just makes you feel really soft, really romantic. Like some of the work I do is on different female archetypes. So we have all these different parts of ourselves. You were saying to me earlier, you're really strong in your mothering archetype, even though you're not actually a mum. And that's part of who you are. It's just an archetype that we have. But actually allowing yourself to tap into your like your seductress part, your lover part, even like your innocent part. There doesn't have to be anything goal-based around it. It's just you letting yourself feel good for feeling good's sake. So I would definitely say treating yourself to some really beautiful underwear that nobody in the world has to see other than you, and just seeing how that makes you go about your day. I did a ritual with my girls on our last retreat. It was an adornment ritual, and we sat for 10 minutes and I just made everybody in the room put jewelry on. Sounds like a really strange thing to do. But we sat for 10 minutes and I said, right, we're almost going to treat this like a meditation, but for 10 minutes, I want you to cover yourself in jewelry, take your time with it, and just see how it actually makes you feel when you let yourself be immersed in a ritual where you're decorating yourself, you're making yourself feel nice for feeling nice sake. You're literally stepping into like goddess mode. So I think anything that gets you into goddess mode, so that might be putting underwear on, it might be having all your jewelry on, just letting yourself dress nice, having a glass of wine if you want to just be on your own and have a glass of wine, whatever makes you feel completely self-indulgent. And then, of course, there's all other elements. We can have nights on our own where we want to do whatever it is that we want to do, and just letting yourself get in a sexy mood. If you can't turn yourself on, it's going to be really difficult, I think, to be in a situation where you've got that expectation of having somebody else do it for you. So I think just keep coming back to yourself, literally, and just keep treating yourself as literally a goddess. I think, yeah.
And I don't think I've got like a couple of friends and we'll have chat. Well, maybe like actually one. I'd say I've got one friend which I know I could say anything to and she'll just laugh or she'll understand it or tell me stuff about her that makes me feel normal. But I think some people don't want to talk to their friends about like their sex life or the libido or how they're feeling. And I think it's good to follow people like you that are sharing stuff like this because it is good. And I don't know if you've seen this whole book that's out right now, and it's called Court of Thorn and Roses. Have you heard of it?
I have not, no.
I think the woman's called I think she's called Kate Moss. No, is it Kate Moss? I don't know. I'll write it down in the show notes anyway. But it's a court of Thorn and Roses, and it's like this lady, Sarah J. Maas, she's called, sorry, Sarah J. Maas. And she's got like 3 different book worlds right now, and it's very sci-fi. And I don't know if you're a sci-fi girl, but I love like a sci-fi book, like Game of Thrones. It's very kind of like Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Based on a female warrior, pretty much. And there is so much sex in it. It's incredible. It's amazing. I love it. And that's the friend that I talked to about it. And I'll be like, oh my God, this girl is getting it on in the book. And we laugh about it and we talk about it. But it's everywhere now. So I was out on a beach the other week and I seen a friend and I was like, oh, I know what you're reading. I'm
Amazing. Yeah.
I think like, not that you should watch porn or whatever. If you want to do it, then that's fine. But I think like reading stuff, like I know there was a big 50 Shades of Grey wave a few years ago, but I think like it does give you a little spark, doesn't it? Read stuff like that, and it's like different things that you're visualizing and you're hearing. I think like it can be good for you, and it can get you in the mood and feel a little bit sexy. Even just reading something as well could be good.
Definitely. And I think it's just challenging things like around female sexuality, like shame, like you were saying earlier, like there's not many people that you can have those kinds of conversations with, because as women, we're made to feel like it's something shameful, you shouldn't talk about that, or there's something wrong with you if you are drawn to your own female sexuality. But like we were saying earlier, when you look at the history of women, like collectively, we were either made to feel like we should assume the role of wife and mother, and if you didn't, you were classed as, excuse my language, but you were classed as a witch or a whore. And throughout history we've been pushed to, this is the ideal and this is how you're supposed to be, and you're going to get burnt at the stake or outcast or whatever else it is if you're you're connected to one of these other archetypes, when actually as women we're all of them. We're not one or the other. We've got all these elements of everything within us as well. So just addressing things like shame and actually challenging it. And female sexuality is very sacred, and it's actually very special, and it's such a huge area. But yeah, little things like that, and I think just having a curiosity around it as well, and letting yourself be open-minded to learning about yourself. One of the questions I get asked the most is about orgasm and about like self-pleasure, and like so many questions about how do I know if I'm doing it right, or how do I know if X, Y, and Z. And I always say, like, just be really curious. Just let yourself enjoy the process of discovering who you are and what you do and what you don't like. But anytime those elements of guilt or shame or any of those really unhelpful emotions that come in, just challenge them and know that they're not your emotions. They're emotions or stories that you've inherited or that you've learned from thousands of years of treatment of women, or just stories from parents or whatever, wherever else it's come from, and just being really mindful to challenge them when they come up, and just know that they're not yours, they're not your emotions to carry, and letting yourself just have that softness in the exploration of yourself.
Yeah, and to enjoy yourself a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your body, it's your skin to skin contact, and it's such a powerful thing. It's such a powerful part of who we are, but we've, again, like our intuition, we're just constantly discouraged away from being connected to it because it is so powerful.
It's like we're going to finish up really soon, but even something that me and Joe notice is like, I don't know if it's like the 10-second rule or something, but it's just like you hug but for a little bit longer, and it's like you can smell each other, your hearts are more connected, like skin on skin. People do it with babies, but they won't do it for themselves as an adult. But to have some skin on skin time, like you don't need to be naked, but just like hugging and holding someone. It can be your pet if you don't have a partner. You can hold your pet and smell them, but like it just regulates your heart rate, doesn't it? And slows everything down and makes you feel good and makes you feel connected. But on your phone, scrolling, watching telly, like not having an intimate kind of conversation or eating over a meal is like where we're losing a lot of connection and a lot of stuff that we actually need through
Yeah.
touch and through smell and all these senses that we have that we're not using anymore.
And that is literally elements of, like, so if I said the words like tantric sex or tantra, or people have got this perception in their minds, but that really is all that really is. It's learning how to breathe together and just being really mindful with each other and being connected to your senses and taking everything in. Like, I think especially for women as well, like sex is something that has become very goal based, or we're sort of not, we're that busy trying to get to the end point that we've actually lost the connection to what the process of it is. Same with absolutely everything we seem to do nowadays. But just actually being immersed in the experiences and all of your senses, full sensory experience. But even like we were saying earlier, that's connecting like with your biochemistry and the different hormones that are released, and like your oxytocin, and being connected to somebody, literally, like you were saying, just from having a hug with Joe for longer than 10 seconds, like the physiological response of that is huge.
Yeah,
So,
powerful stuff, isn't it? And simple stuff that we're just forgetting to do. So for you, what's next with Rebirth? Have you got any more? Because I seen you doing an amazing retreat last week, and I was like, that is so up my street. With what are the bowls called? What do you call them?
so they're Tibetan singing bowls, sound healing bowls. Yeah, they're beautiful. It's a beautiful practice. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
So what's next for you, maybe professionally? What have we got going on with Rebirth? What we go doing personally and physically as well? What's your kind of goals right now?
So professionally, so next retreat, so just announced yesterday, the first abroad retreat for Rebirth is going to be in Marrakesh. The place is just, oh, it's just so beautiful. I can't wait. So of course that, and continuing with the retreats. So they happen, big ones every quarter, and then little mini ones every 1 to 2 months. So a couple of weeks ago, we did a smaller one, which was all about the spring and celebrating the goddess Maya, so the goddess of May. And just connecting women back into the seasons, back into themselves, and that sort of thing. And then, of course, the program for Rebirth, so it's a 6-month program, looking at every single element of female health, physiological, mental, emotional, spiritual. The last part of the program is all about connecting to the divine feminine, sexuality, so a lot of the things we've been talking about, and learning about the basics of female health, so your menstrual cycle, all that sort of stuff, how to eat for your cycle, how to live for your cycle, connecting to the moon, releasing emotional trauma, somatics. There's so much in there. So that's professional. And then personal, I think I've been that immersed in work, like I've kind of put personal on the back burner, but I think personal, when everything is launched, to go traveling a little bit. I'd really like to go to Bali and have some time there. And then physical, I don't have any physical goals at the moment, and that's actually really good for me. I think because for the last 10 years, I've constantly had a photo shoot to get ready for, a competition to get ready for, or something physical based. Actually really nice for me at the moment to just let my body just be. So I haven't actually got any physical performance based that side of stuff. I've not got any of that going on, and that's actually really good. That's healthy for me at the moment. So yeah, just carry on with the journey and enjoy it.
Yeah, no, and it looks like you're doing amazing, and it's only a year, so it's like, wow, where would things be in another year or even a couple of years? I know we've mentioned your Instagram, that we can find you there. Is there anywhere else, or do you just prefer Instagram?
To be honest, it's just my Instagram at the moment. I like to keep everything in one place, which I probably do need to diversify a little bit, but always on Instagram. Yeah, so it's probably the best place to find me, really.
Yeah, perfect. Amazing. I feel like we've covered so much. I feel almost tired. We've gone through so much as well. But there's still so much more that we can cover. But I think, like, yeah, I'm loving what you're doing right now. I think you're doing something really special, and it's stuff that women really need. So I appreciate your time and coming on here and sharing all your wisdom with all of us. And I'm excited for all the other stuff you'll be sharing through the rest of the year. And hopefully I would love to come to like one of your retreats, especially, do you know when I feel I need it the most is like autumn. I feel like autumn's a very hard, heavy time for me, but I'm just ready to just wind down. So anything in autumn, I'll be there.
Okay, interesting. So autumn is the wild woman phase of the year. So we need to bring that side of you out, Liam.
Yeah. Oh, I like it. Right, everybody else, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've loved today. If you've got any questions, just go and follow Victoria. You can ask her away. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you all have an amazing week.